money might not be the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about our health, but finances can be a major source of stress and definitely can impact your health. And if you've ever noticed that your finances are affecting your sleep or causing you headaches, you're definitely not alone. A poll from the American Psychological Association showed that more than 60% of us consider money to be a major source of stress. And so people are starting to talk a lot about the concept of financial well-being, which is defined as a state where you can fully meet your money obligations, you can feel secure in your financial future, and you can make choices that will allow you to enjoy your life. Doesn't that sound great? The good news is that there are things we can all do to be more financially well. And so today we're going to go back to the basics with DCA and talk about strategies that you can use starting today to help you on your journey to financial well-being. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carlos Lopez, who, as I said, is the Director of Community Affairs at the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs for today's presentation.
Hi, everyone. As Rose mentioned, my name is Carlos, and I'm the Director of Community Affairs for the Department of Consumer Affairs. At DCA, we have a mission, which is to protect and enhance the daily economic lives of New Yorkers to create thriving communities. And we do this through three primary activities. Number one is consumer protection. Number two is workers' rights, ensuring that they're protected in New York City. And number three is financial empowerment. And today, I'm here to talk to you about some of the great financial services that MHC has to offer and some healthy tips and habits with regards to your finances. Now, as Marissa mentioned, managing our finances can be stressful, big or small. We have so many expenses we have to pay for. It can be our rent, it can be our bills, it can be those unexpected expenses we didn't see coming. But we want to make sure we have the right tools. We want to make sure we have the right habits in place to manage our finances and to promote our financial well-being. Now, two particular products or services that we offer at DCA that relate to finances is one, free tax prep. Anybody working or living in New York City can get their taxes done for free if they make $66,000 or less. And number two is our financial empowerment centers. Anybody living or working in New York City can go to a financial empowerment center. There's no income threshold. Now, at DCA's financial empowerment centers, of which there are 20 located across the city, you can get one-on-one personal financial counseling. They can help you with your budgeting, with reducing your debt, increasing your savings. They can help. A financial counselor can help you plan for important purchases, life events, saving up for something new, for a car, for moving into a new place, or maybe paying off those loans you might have, like from your student loans. Now, and the last thing they can really help you do as well is refer you to free legal services, such as free legal advice or free advice with your retirement or your investments. Since the start of our program for our financial empowerment centers, we reduced debt by $63 million in New York City. Since the start of our program, we built savings by $5 million in New York City. And I say that because these programs work. These tips that I'm sharing with you from our program work. And we think it's important that as many New Yorkers as possible can learn about them. Now, what are some things our financial counselors can go on, and what are some good financial habits in general? Number one is budgeting. It's always important to track your expenses, and kind of like if you were on a fitness plan to get healthy as well. You want to track how much exercise you're doing, how many carbs you're taking in per day, to see how much you're putting in and getting out of your plan. When I went to my financial counseling appointment, they gave me a few different options to choose from, including spreadsheets I could use to track my expenses, or even easy-to-use apps on my phone. And in my case, I chose an app called Mint, but everyone has really different preferences, and I encourage folks to look into it themselves to see what's their best fit. But a tracker is so important because you can see what you're spending your money on and how much. Find ways to save a little bit here and find ways to save a little bit there. And perhaps even reduce those unnecessary recurring expenses. And you can think of ways to cut things out of your budget too. Does perhaps maybe bringing my lunch to work save me from going down to a restaurant that's a little bit expensive? Or is maybe not taking an Uber when I don't need to, maybe reduce another recurring expense when I don't need it. These are little things that we can manage by tracking our expenses to make sure that we're really cutting back where it's not necessary. What's another type of unnecessary recurring expense? How about those banking or transaction fees? And what I'm specifically referring to that might be accessible to all of us are ATM fees. When we use an ATM that is not a part of our banking system, if you think about it, you use an ATM 5 or 10 times a month and it has fees tied to it, that could be $25. In a year, it could be over $250. So it's just something to keep in mind that there are little things that we might spend on, but those little things add up at the end of the day. Something I want to mention very quickly are some of the informal services that people might use, like check cashers or money transfers. These are things that are really accessible in our neighborhoods. They're really easy to use, but they could add up for a person using these services into $300 or $400 a year, and that's a lot of money that you might want to take back. So it's important to think, even though something might be easy, even though something might be really useful at the moment, you have to think about it in the long term, that is it really taking away a lot of money from my bank account? And there are other things you can use, other products you can use to make sure that you're saving as much as possible and that those savings add up. And that can be getting a savings account using your IDNYC. It could be getting direct deposit, or it could be using your works community benefit options. So it's really important to consider those items as well. Now, the next major item we work on or to consider is credit. Now, what is credit and why is credit so important? Credit is borrowed money that you get from a financial institution that you use to purchase goods and services when you need them. And it's important because, especially for major purchases, you're going to need credit to complete a deal. Now, at DCA, we often find that folks might not know their credit. And we find that folks, when they go to a business, the business will tell them, hey, you have bad credit, or you have no credit, and therefore we're going to give you a bad deal, or we're going to give you a deal with a really high interest rate that's really taking advantage of it. Oftentimes we find that businesses they're not really telling the truth about that, but it's important to know that the consumer has to be armed with their knowledge of their credit as well, so they can protect themselves and get the best deal possible. Now, how does credit work? Credit can be provided by a bank or financial institution, and the amount you have access to relates to the institution's confidence in you, their trust in you. So they want to see how much income you have, maybe how much assets you have, and also they want to see, do you have a history of paying back your loan, your credit lines? Now, to measure this, banks or financial institutions use credit scores that relate to how likely you are to pay debt. Credit scores are determined by 5 major items: your payment history, the amount of debt you currently have, the length of your credit history, the types of credit you use, and whether you're actively looking for new credit. But I just want folks to remember those 5 items. It's paying back your debt, the amount of debt you have in the moment, the length of your history, the types of credit, and the types of new credit you're looking for. Okay. Now, what are some tips for managing your credit or credit score? Number 1 is always make sure you know where you stand. Once a year, you should be looking into your credit score to see where you are. If you want, you can also go to a DCA financial counselor and they can do this to you for free. Look up your credit score, and they can do so without even affecting your credit score. Because if within a 1-year period you look into your credit more than once, it's possible that could bring down your score. Another item to keep in mind is to keep your balances low on credit cards, and if possible, pay them off completely at each month. The next item, don't close off accounts when you pay off a credit card. Owing the same amount but having fewer options actually may lower your credit score. And I know there can be concern, you don't want to have a credit card open, you don't want to use it, but in that case, leave the credit card at home. Even freeze it in your fridge like they used to do in the back in the day. Like, these are things, but closing your account is going to affect your credit score. So make sure to avoid that if you can. The next item, don't open credit cards that you don't need just to increase your available credit, or because you want to make it look like you have a mix of credit. When a bank or a financial institution is looking over your history, your credit history, and they see that you're trying to open a lot of different accounts, they're asking themselves questions. Why does this person need so much credit? You know, do we have confidence this person is able to pay this back? So these kind of practices might open you up to a little bit of scrutiny. Similarly, don't open a lot of new at the same time. not only does it make the bank wary about your credit, your access to credit, about your ability to pay it back, it also lowers the average age of your account, which will bring down your score too. And the last thing to think about is there are ways to repair your credit. You know, if sometimes you've made a couple of decisions and your credit score is not where you want it to be, there are ways to fix that, and there are places you can go. And in many financial institutions or banks or credit unions, for example, you can use credit building products to improve your credit score. Now these credit building products have different names at each place, but they generally operate in the same kind of way. The first is a secured credit card. For a secured credit card, you put a deposit at a bank to open up a line of credit. So in this case, you put $100 down in a deposit and you get $100 of line of credit. And you use that credit like you would any kind of credit card. You make your purchases, you pay back your balances, and you do this over a period of time, usually a year. And the point is that you are creating a credit history with this bank. You're creating a relationship by making your payments on time. You're improving your credit score. And the deposit is there to make sure to assure the bank that, you know, they'll have something there in case you decide not to make payments. But the goal is to make these payments over a year, usually over a year, and by the end of it, you graduate. It's a funny term, but you graduate from this credit card, and they give you back all that money, and now you can use other types of credit cards where you don't have to have a deposit. And like I said, during this whole process of making your payments on time, you're improving your credit. The other product that we have is a credit builder loan. The way this loan works, it's kind of similar to the secured credit card, but you ask for a loan from a bank or financial institution. However, this loan, they put into a savings account and they keep it for a little while, right? And over time, intermittently, you pay into this loan. And as you're making these payments and you're paying on time and you're developing this relationship with this bank, you're improving your credit at the same time. And at the point where you've paid off the loan completely, they release that money from the savings account and they give it back to you. And from there, you can have a deeper relationship with your financial institution. You can get other types of loans. You can get mortgages, perhaps. You basically have that first step into having a relationship with the bank. Now, the last thing that we work with you at a financial empowerment center, but also that you should consider as a consumer, is your debt. You should find ways to prioritize your debt, make a plan to pay it off. This could involve looking at the interest rate, the type of debt you have, considering if it's a loan or if it's credit. Ways to cut back your spending from unnecessary areas so that you can dedicate it more to paying off your debt and getting free of those the kind of that stress, right? And something I want to mention very quickly is that all New Yorkers, New York City residents, have rights protected by the Department of Consumer Affairs with regards to debt collection agencies. These are businesses that collect. They are third-party businesses that collect debt on creditors, but they have to be licensed by the Department of Consumer Affairs. So if you have debt and you're getting pressured or you're getting harassed by a debt collection agency, please feel free to make a complaint with the Department of Consumer Affairs or even with me, because you'll have my contact information by the end of this. Now, the next thing I want to bring up is student loan debt. As I mentioned, our counselors can help you if you're looking to buy an important product or even pay down a particular loan. And student loan debt is an item of work that our agency has been heavily involved in over the past year. Across New York City, approximately 1 million people, and they owe upwards of $34 billion. And I say this, like, a lot of us in the city have student loan debt. You know, it's something that's not common, but we want to find ways to make sure that we're addressing student loan debt and the student loan debt crisis in New York City. Now, at DCA, we've done a lot of research, a lot of outreach to make sure that we're understanding what's going on with student loans in New York City. And in particular, last year, the commissioner of DCA, Commissioner Lorelei Salas, held a listening tour in neighborhoods that we found our research were adversely affected by student loan debt. These were neighborhoods, particularly in the Bronx and Brooklyn, but really it's a phenomenon all over the city where we find a higher rate of people that might be delinquent or might be defaulting on their student loan debt payments. And following that, we held a public hearing for New Yorkers on student loan debt. And this is where we brought together a lot of different folks, experts, but also everyday New Yorkers to testify about student loan debt and how that experience is affecting their lives, their stress, their well-being. So because of that, we've started to put into place some items that really focus on addressing student loan debt. One is we've been holding student loan debt clinics across the city. These are all-day events where you can come in and sit down with a financial counselor to go through your student loan debt options. We've developed some really more groundbreaking research on student loan debt, and we're going after schools that we have found that have engaged in predatory practices against New Yorkers, such as Berkeley College, for example, which did a lot of deceptive things to trap students in student loan debt. They were deceptive about their graduation rates. They were setting people up with loans, student loans, but actually they were telling the students these were grants or scholarships. So really deceptive practices that we want to clamp down on at the Department of Consumer Affairs. And I think leading up to for our future plans for this, we want to work with people more and understand how student loan debt is affecting their lives. Maybe pursuing some policy recommendations that we can share in the future. And lastly, conducting some further investigations with our legal authority in New York City. Now, what I want to mention about student loan debt is we at DCA have trained all of our financial counselors to work one-on-one with folks to identify your best options to pay back your student loan debt. Now, these could be, for example, income-driven repayment plans. These are plans where you tie your monthly loan payment to your income. There are also loan forgiveness programs if you are a government, nonprofit, or volunteer worker. Special programs also for teachers. And for immediate help, if you really feel that you've been burdened or shackled by your debt, we can get you access to deferment or forbearance programs. And deferment and forbearance, just to clarify, it's the ability to momentarily take a pause, stop in your student loan payments because of the weight it's put on you. Now, for many of these options, we find it's always important to sit down with a professional who can give you expert advice and guidance, documents, and complete applications as needed. In conclusion, I think I want to focus and say that DCA, the Department of Consumer Affairs, is to be a resource for New Yorkers, for city workers as well. And I hope these tips today have been helpful. And I want you to remember as well that we have financial empowerment centers available for free and available to anybody who lives or works in New York City. And to make an appointment, you can book online, you can call one, or you can even reach out to myself, and I'm happy to help at any time. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm also happy to take any questions you might have right now.
So thank you so much, Carlos, for that great presentation. I also want to add that all of us as city workers are eligible for the service loan forgiveness program, and Workwell and DCA are working on some information to come out about that shortly to help you really understand how to access those services. But now I'd like to just switch gears and highlight some resources that are available specifically for city employees. The DCA stuff applies to you and it applies to your family and it applies to everyone you know, but as city employees, we have some really unique financial resources available. And the first being is the pension plans. The city is lucky enough to, we're an employer that still has pension plan options, and it's something that all eligible employees should definitely take advantage of. It's a great way to save retirement. And the type of work you are, your title, your agency will determine which pension plan covers you. The majority of civilian employees are in NYCERS, the New York City Employee Retirement System. But fire, police, and the educational institutions have their own pension plans as well. And employees will fall in different tiers of the pension based on their start date. So it's never too late. If you didn't join a pension plan when you started working for the city, you can buy back time through payroll deductions. There's also options to take out a loan against your pension if that's needed. So I just want to highlight that the pension plan rules and costs and benefits vary plan to plan and employee to employee. So we recommend that you contact your specific pension plan for more information. And also note that many of the pension plans have workshops and resources to help you plan and get ready for retirement. So in retirement, it is important to have as many sources of income as you can. And so if you join the pension plan, you've got that and you've got Social Security, but it's also great to supplement that. And the Office of Labor Relations has a few different plans that can help you do that. The first is the Deferred Compensation, DCP. It has a range of retirement savings plans for city employees. There's a 457 plan, a 401k, pre-tax, post-tax, and if that all is Greek to you, they have certified financial planners that can help you figure out what is best for you. They also do one-on-one financial planning consultations at a fairly low cost, and their website has some great videos on various financial topics. An additional retirement plan option is the New York City IRA, the NICE IRA, which you might want to consider joining if you're, maxing out your DCP account or if you decide to leave civil service. But again, everyone's situation is different, so we encourage you to visit the program websites and learn about what's best for you. And DCA can also be a great resource in helping you sort that out. And I just want to highlight the Deferred Compensation Plan also offers a range of financial planning seminars on a regular basis in their office in Lower Manhattan. You can see the calendar here just for February as an example. There are topics like investing, elder care, college planning, etc. And we'll have the website at the end where you can see the month's calendar. And I also want to flag that many of the city's unions also offer financial workshops and programs, UFT, DC 37, etc. And we need you to contact your union to see what types of financial resources they have available to you. Lastly, I just want to highlight a few flexible spending plan options that are available through OLR. There is a program called DCAP that allows employees to set aside some of their paycheck through payroll deductions, so you never see the money go straight into the account to care for dependents. There's a similar plan that lets you pay for eligible out-of-pocket healthcare expenses, also through pre-tax payroll deductions. So this is a great way to kind of put some of that money aside pre-tax for costs that you anticipate having. And so if you visit nyc.gov/FSA, you can find out more information about who's eligible and whether these programs are right for you. Or you can also reach out to your agency personnel officer if you have specific questions. And as promised, I do want to share Carlos's contact information and all of the social media and website information for DCA. It's a great resource. The Financial Empowerment Centers and everything that we talked about, are all available to you. And Carlos's email address is here, if anyone has specific questions. But since there are often, if one person has a question, it's very likely that 10 more have the same question. So right now, we encourage you to use the chat box on the screen and type in any questions you have, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. And just to give you a second to type in those questions, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for bearing with us through some unexpected tech glitches. It happens, and we're glad you stuck with us. We also would love your feedback on today's presentation. And so there's a web URL on your screen. You can copy and paste it. You'll also get it via email, along with a recap of everything we discussed today and a recording of today's webinar. And so,
all right, so one of the questions is, can you check your credit report once a year, or is that once within 365 days? So Carlos, I'm going to pass that to you.
Sorry.
The question.
So can you check the credit score once in a calendar year, or is it every 365 days?
I don't want to give the wrong information. We've always referred to it as once a year, as in a calendar year. But I can get back to folks on that one because I don't want to give any kind of wrong details.
Great. Can you provide a little more information about the loan forgiveness program that's available to government employees, or refer people to a place where they can find more information?
Yeah. Well, so the loan forgiveness program, I think what we found over, I think, the past couple months and looking into this, it's been actually very difficult for people to access the loan forgiveness program. So I encourage folks is to make an appointment with a financial counselor and sit down with them to make sure that they're complying with all the necessary items for the loan forgiveness program.
Great, thanks. Someone had a question about, is there a limit you can contribute to the flexible spending account for childcare? And the typical range that you can contribute is between $500 and $5,000 each year.
No, I'm not sure about any particular limit. Okay. Oh, you do? Okay, sorry.
What about someone who, doesn't have a lot of savings, wants to work towards a goal of buying a house?Maybe they don't have the best credit. Where would you recommend they start? With their counselor or just on their own?
So they're actually as a home buying, there are actually a lot of HUD approved housing counselors throughout the city. They're actually really neighborhood based as well. And the first thing to do, I think, is to look into the webinars they offer as well and those webinars are really helpful because they set the expectations. Do you have the ability, or do you have the ability to start planning for home buying? Things you want to look at are like housing ratio. Housing ratio, for example, is how much gross income you're getting in and how much of that income you're going to be using for your housing expenses, mortgage in particular. You'd be looking, a lot of folks might want to also consider seeing where their credit's at with their bank institution. And also you want to consider options. Is this a house where you're buying kind of all the, not just the building itself, but the property where it sits on? Are you looking to a co-op? Are you buying more shares within a building? So it's really about, you have a lot of different things to consider. And these HUD approved is the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's a federal government. But these HUD approved housing counselors, they're really great. They work with community organizations across the city, and you should really first is appointment with them.
Great. I think we have time for a few more questions. One being, where would someone start to try to figure out a budget? You mentioned using Mint or spreadsheets, but where would someone start to figure out how much they should be spending on different areas of their budget, whether it's rent or groceries or anything along those lines?
I mean, it's kind of really about what you want to do. I think when I sat down with my housing counselor or with my financial counselor, they said to me, he's like, where do you want to go? And that could really indicate, like, am I really trying to build up my savings to, for example, buy a house? Or am I more looking to have kind of like a comfortable, not too stressful financial situation where I'm not paying too much money in different parts? So the first step, obviously, I think, is your income. How much are you getting in? And dividing up of that among the necessary expenses and unnecessary expenses. I think groceries would be a necessary expense, but I also think unnecessary expenses could be maybe not going out too much, maybe not eating out too much. Like I said in my example, when I said Ubers, that was pretty much a personal example. So it's really dividing necessary and unnecessary and using what your total income can do for that situation.
Great. So here's another question that came up a few times. Carlos, you suggested not to open credit cards that you don't need, but a lot of times their credit cards have a bonus or a discount at a store. So why is that not a good thing to open an account? if
Well-
there's a perk?
Well, I think so. I think when the perks are there for a reason. I think every business knows the promise of a perk to get a consumer in. I think opening a new account, the problem that it has is that it just brings you under scrutiny for the bank, for the financial institution that's giving you that credit. Now, that's not to say, I don't want to make it seem like it's a blanket statement, you shouldn't open new accounts, or that this applies to everybody specifically. It perhaps might not. You know, it's possible that you should open another credit account, but that's something that you should talk over with a financial expert. The only thing I wanted to indicate with not opening new accounts is that it brings you under more scrutiny. You're also bringing down the average age of your credit history as well. If I can just have, I think the average age of your credit history, it accounts for about 15% of your credit score. So if you're bringing that down, it has an impact on your credit score. Even if you might have a perk that might give you a discount or might give you cash back, it's something that one has to consider really. And I think the best way to consider that is sitting down with a financial expert.
With the financial empowerment centers, is there any income limit, or can anyone come in and access those services?
There is no income limit to using a financial empowerment center to sit down with a counselor. There's no limit to how many times you can go. We know it can be a little intimidating at first, but you can go 2, 3, 4, 5 times. It's really a resource that's great. You really build a relationship with your counselor. Where at one point, I think with mine, I was emailing, just going over email, so I didn't have to go in for an appointment anymore. But it's something, yeah, it's a really great resource we want people to use more and to know more about.
That's great. Thank you so much. And yeah, so once again, to clarify, for those who may have joined late, the financial empowerment centers are run through the Department of Consumer Affairs. They are located all across the city in all 5 boroughs, and we'll share the slides and everything. We'll share the DCA website, which is where you can make an appointment to get started on your financial empowerment. And so with that, I want to say there were some questions we didn't get to, but we will try to answer them via email in the next few days. Carlos's contact information will be shared as well. And we thank you so much for joining us for this first webinar. We have several upcoming webinars. Our next one is February 13th, and it'll be on developing habits to promote happiness in your life. It'll be a little bit about positive psychology and habits that can help you live the best life you can. But I want to thank Carlos again from the Department of Consumer Affairs, and thank you all for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful day.